We can still say Shabbat Shalom to everyone, as it is still Shabbat until we complete Havdalah in a little while. So it's good that we were together at the beginning of Shabbat, and we're together once again for the last bit of Shabbat. And as we savor our time together, we're going to begin with a story.
Are you putting me up? There we go. Till Shabbat Shalom. Those of you who attended or listened to services last night would have heard Rabbi Robert tell a story. I'm not telling the same story, but she said something when she opened her remarks about that story that is relevant to the story I'm telling tonight, which is that there's lots of variations on each kind of folk tale that you could possibly have. It's surprising. There are people who actually do scholarly studies. I still have some books where someone had, when I was in college, and well, if somebody does something new, sometimes read it about where they tell you, like with fairy tales. It's amazing the different versions of fairy tales, especially if you grew up with the Walt Disney versions, where that day for Cinderella, people didn't cut off their toes and their heels to try to fit into the shoe, which actually the first time I read some of the Grimm's tales, it was like, these things are really bloody. But anyway, there's not bloody with this tonight. It's just that this is a variation on a story I've told several times. It's different enough that the lesson it sort of teaches is the same, but almost all the rest of it is completely different. And I thought it was sort of interesting to be able to tell this one. And those of you who have heard the other story, I won't tell you which one it is, so I don't spoil it for you. To see for those folks who can think about how they differ. So this takes place a long time ago, and a man was so poor, his children often went to sleep hungry at night. And he worked very hard. He was a cobbler fixing shoes, but just somehow there wasn't ever enough money to be able to feed his family. And sometimes he would be so upset when Shabbat would come, he would actually try to hide away and weep so his family wouldn't see it. But that time, to not have enough food, to not have anything special for Shabbat, really bothered him. So one day the cobbler was taking a walk in the marketplace, and he walked through a bakery. The smell of bread was so good, and all he could think of was how much his children really loved to be able to have a taste of fresh bread instead of the several-day-old bread that they would buy. And in fact, he didn't even have any money in his pocket at all for bread, but he just said, the baker won't miss one loaf. So he quickly went and he grabbed a loaf of bread and thought, I will pay the baker back someday when I have money, and started to run away. So of course the baker sees him and starts yelling, thief, thief. And the Sultan's soldiers are close by, and they immediately arrest the poor man. Now the cobbler is afraid for his life, because the penalty for death in that kingdom, and for penalty for theft in that kingdom, is death. And there are plenty of places where that was true. He thought, what should he do? No matter how hard life was, he'd never stolen before. He just didn't know what came over him. And he worried about his family. What would his wife and children think when he didn't show up at home? And as he was thinking about all this and walking by, he felt something hit him in the face. And it turns out that a horse had gone by and trod on a pomegranate, and some of the seeds had come up and hit his face. And suddenly he had an idea. So he started muttering to himself, loud enough for the soldiers to be able to hear, but it'd be sort of as if they were overhearing him. If only the Sultan knew my secret, I know he would let me live. If only I could speak with the Sultan and tell him my wonderful secret. When the Sultan hears the secret, he will reward his soldiers handsomely. Now the soldiers were hearing this and thinking, what do we have to lose? If we take him in and the Sultan's happy, the Sultan will reward us. If not, then the man dies anyway. It's not, just make it take a little longer. So the soldiers brought the man before the Sultan, and the soldiers told the Sultan that the man had some secret he was supposed to tell him. So the Sultan asked, what is this wonderful secret? Oh, Sultan, I have a secret handed down to me from my great-grandfathers to my father, and now to me. I hold in my hand a pomegranate kernel that will grow into a tree and bear fruit overnight. Each luscious pomegranate will be filled with 613 kernels. Obviously, he was Jewish because that's the Jewish budget. I don't know that anybody has ever counted. I've certainly never counted pomegranate seeds, but the idea is that for all of the mitzvot, the pomegranates represents that. So the Sultan was a curious man, and he figured he had nothing to lose to see what happened. So he said to the cobbler, really, that must be some kind of magical seed. We'll see. You're going to spend the night in prison, and then tomorrow morning you will be brought to the royal garden and we'll plant your seed then. And if it does not grow into a tree with pomegranates by the next morning, you'll immediately be put to death. If the tree does grow, as you say, then I will free you and you will return home. So the cobbler smiled slightly as he nodded to the Sultan, and he was taken to the prison. And the next morning, the soldiers brought the cobbler to the royal garden. Soon the Sultan arrived, surrounded by his advisors and his guards. The gardener had already dug a small hole in which to plant the pomegranate kernel, and everybody was interested to see exactly what would happen. So the Sultan gave the order to begin planting, but as the cobbler bent to put the seed in the ground, he quickly straightened up and said, "Oh, Sultan, the one condition I learned from my father is that only a completely honest man who has never stolen or taken anything that doesn't belong to him can plant this. I realize now I am a thief because I stole that loaf of bread from our hungry children. I no longer have the honor to be able to plant the seed." So the cobbler turned to the Sultan's advisor and said, "But you, the Sultan's trusty chief advisor, surely you can plant the seed." The advisor waved his hand away, saying, No, I can't do that. You see, a while ago, I was having a problem that I needed to solve for the Sultan, and I talked to my wife, and she gave me some really excellent advice. And I pretended to the Sultan that advice was mine because it was kind of embarrassing. He would think that my wife was smarter than I am. Why would he want an advisor whose wife was smarter than he was? So, no, I can't plant it. So the cobbler turned to the royal treasurer and said, "You are the most reliable and worthy treasurer. The Sultan can trust you with his whole fortune. No doubt you're an honest person. Here, come and plant the pomegranate seed so the Sultan can have fresh pomegranate seed tomorrow morning." The treasurer bowed his head and whispered, "I'm afraid I can't plant the seed. You see, not long ago, I gave a worthy person a deserved and great reward from the Sultan, but I took a portion of the reward for myself, and I didn't tell anybody about it." "Oh," said the cobbler, "well, oh, Sultan, you must be without a doubt the most honest man in the world. Take the seed and plant it yourself. The pomegranate appears for the plucking in the morning." "I'm afraid I can't plant the seed either," said the Sultan in a soft voice. "You see, years ago, when I was in my teens, my father was still Sultan. He gave a soldier a beautiful medal, and I was so jealous of that medal that I took it for myself and I kept it." "Oh, Sultan," said the cobbler, "you and your advisors are also powerful and wise and achieved much wealth, and yet you have not been honest and so cannot plant the pomegranate seed. I am a poor man who only wanted to live a life without shame, yet because of my terrible poverty, I stole one loaf of bread from my family. It's true that even stealing a little is wrong, but..." Then suddenly the Sultan burst out laughing. "You, cobbler, are a clever man after all. You have taught us all a very important lesson. For this you will never go hungry again. Not only shall I pay the baker for the bread, but you will be pardoned as well. I will also give you a great reward, which the treasurer will give to you personally, and the full amount this time. Now return home with my gratitude." Happily, the cobbler returned home in the Sultan's carriage. Soon after that, the treasurer brought him a chest filled with gold and a large basket of pomegranates. So for those of you who heard things before that may be reminiscent of the story, one of my favorite stories about Leah and the tree of gold that had to be with orange, which some ways I kind of like a little bit better because everything that happened to her was by accident. And not only was they were threatening her with a prison, not with death. But I thought that to me, it was kind of interesting to see and to compare the different versions. I'm sure there are numerous other versions of the same thing floating around, just trying to show that a lot of people make a mistake.
Thank you for sharing this story this evening. And we will get ready to make Havdalah. Okay, now you can hear me. So thank you for the story that you shared, Rachel. And we're going to get ready to make Havdalah. I'm going to put the blessings up, and I'm going to add some reflection questions for us to think about before each of the blessings this evening, to add another dimension to Havdalah for us. Last week, we started with a reading beforehand from Rabbi Deborah Smith that actually Rabbi Rachel had shared with me. Eternal One of blessing, the weekly time of separation is here. We reach out to hold you close a bit longer. As we step away, we also reach out. We draw you near. Stay with us a little while longer. Your fragrance, your brilliant glow, your sweet delights, reminders of who we can be, of where we can go. Separation, a time of missed opportunities. Separation, a time of new possibilities. As the Shabbat flames flicker and die, the light of each soul glows steady, a heart renewed, a life reborn. So with those of you who have Havdalah candles you're going to light, this would be the time to light them. And we're going to begin with the wine. So this is the reflection piece to consider at this part of our ceremony. Think about what moments of joy and celebration you are especially grateful to have had. So we'll think for a moment about moments of joy and celebration that each of us is especially grateful to have had, as we sing the nigun part of the blessings. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen borei peri hagafen. As we move to the second blessing, which of course is for the spices, and as we prepare to smell the spices, I want you to think of another person who means a lot to you. And what about them would you like to inhale? And in what ways do they fill your life with sweet sensations? Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei v'samim Bore mine visamim. As we see the light of our braided or double wick candle, as we get ready to do the blessing over the candle, think about who and what makes you shine more brightly. And think in what ways are you a better person when intertwined with someone else. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei me'orei ha'esh, borei me'orei ha'esh. As we get ready for the final blessing of distinction, distinguishing between Shabbat and the rest of the week, consider what are your unique, distinct qualities for which you are grateful. And what boundaries or directions do you need in order to be able to recognize others? And the final thing to consider is how can you create and delineate time and space in this coming week to make room for appreciation. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol, ben or l'choshech, ben yom hashvi'i l'sheshet yemei ha'maseh. Baruch atah Adonai Hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol. We take another moment to savor this last moment of Shabbat. And when we're ready, then we put our candles out in our wine or juice. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, Bimheira v'yameinu, Yavo Eleinu, Imashiach ben David, Imashiach ben David, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi. As you unmute, so we can sing Shavua Tov together to wish everyone a good week. I want to give credit to M Squared, which is one of the groups that was part of Gratitude Days. Believe it or not, we first used this material in 5780 for Havdalah, much earlier in the pandemic when we were all in our homes and joining together for Havdalah. And I think the material is pretty timely and holds true over the course of time. So I thought it was good to bring it back for us this evening as well. So please join me in singing Shavua Tov. Shavua Tov. Shavuot
Tov,
Shavuot
Shavuot Tov,
Shavuot Tov,
Shavuot Tov,
Shavuot
Tov,
Shavuot Tov,
a good week,
a week
a
of
week of
peace.
peace.
May
May
gladness
gladness
reign
reign
and
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 joy
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 increase.
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 A
A good
good
week,
week,
Week
a
a
week
week
of
of
peace.
peace.
gladness
May
May
gladness
gladness
reign
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 and
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 joy.
joy
joy
increase.
increase.
We wish everyone a Shavuot Tov.
Shavuot Tov,
For those,
Shavuot Tov.
for those on Facebook, say goodbye to you until next week for Shabbat, either Friday evening or Saturday. And will join with us